$500 that I had once received from the Hope Scholarship and invested it about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and it went down underneath $500, you know, because of investment fees, and it stayed there for the past 4 or 5 years. When I was thinking about this show and submitting something, you know, I decided I would withdraw the remaining like $475 and match it up, you know, put my own 15 with it to make it 500 again. And I bought 500 $1 lottery tickets and scratched them off. I had an assistant who was recording the winnings or not, you know, with the symbols that you see on the chalkboard, you know, so an X if it didn't win, a number if it was whatever the winning was, and then just a T if there was a ticket. And I didn't really instruct him on that, but he kind of made little crosses for the tickets, so that's something I haven't thought a ton about. But anyway, that was basically, that was it. It took about an hour and a half. We're getting back to sort of the presentation, you know, my experience, like told you guys what was going to happen, and for most other people, you know, it was a more general description, because to me it's important for people to come to a performance. That's one of the reasons that, you know, I'm engaged with it, you know. It's just the fact that it happens in that space, and it requires me to be there and you to be there. And so, you know, it was very different before because I didn't talk about it as much, without trying to be too, you know, cryptic and come off really arrogant. I tried not to talk about it too much, you know, to kind of save some of that experience for the actual performance. And then after the fact, it kind of retains more of, I guess, more of the energy that came out in the actual performance, because if you tell someone beforehand, they're like, oh, you're going to do a performance, you say, yeah, it's kind of this and this a little bit, you know, you kind of, maybe you're going to lose a certain number of people who care to think about it, but afterwards you say, oh, I saw you did a performance, and you say, what did you do? And you say, well, I scratched off 500 lottery tickets, you know. Generally people's responses are puzzled. I invited my mom to come, and she was very, she said, why? Yeah, we won't get further into that. So
she is the one when you were laying on your bones?
Yeah, she was that too. Yeah. But, you know, and so, I mean, I guess to me, in terms of response, that's kind of the way
the before and after is what we mostly see, for sure. What about you, Hope? What have your responses been to your work since it's been in the show?
I've had a lot of magic happen at this show. I fell upon knowing about Harriet Powers because I teach art appreciation at Athens Tech. And I was looking for local folk artists to teach about, and I came across Harriet Powers then. I was actually in a bit of an artistic slump, and Judy approached me about creating a project based on some other work she'd seen. And I said, I have to do something about Harriet Powers. I'm going to recreate her quilt. I want to see how big it is in real life. I don't think she wanted me to do it because it was one of the hardest things I've ever made. I had to create a pattern, and then I tried lots of different materials and ended up with the vellum. The night before I installed it, we had a big freeze and all of my glue fogged. So that was, I don't know, it was really interesting. A lot of strange things happened. A lot of my Athens Tech students came to the exhibition for the first gallery visit they'd ever had in their lives. And I just had them all write a paper on a gallery visit, and about 60% of my students out of 75 came to see this show. I have 2 older African American students who approached me and said thank you for making this kind of work. The top echelon was that I got an email from Harriet Powers' great-great-great-granddaughter, who lives in Arizona, who was looking for a pattern of the Bible quilt to make a dress from some of the imagery and came across me online and thanked me for keeping her name alive. I also got interviewed by other people's pixels about my work and specifically this show. And the interviewer asked me about appropriation. And I hadn't really considered that I'd appropriated her quilt. I just thought I'd recreated it. And so that was a really good question that I haven't quite answered yet. Like, the difference between remaking and appropriation.
Stanley, what have your reactions been or responses you've gotten since it's been in the show?
During the opening, it was pretty good. I had also a lot of students that came. I just tell my students do not write about my work because it's weird. It's a conflict of interest, I guess. I want to get true opinions from them.
It was removed very famously from the show that actually the curator is here at Gainesville State College by the president of that college, which that information is on the wall label, and there's a lot more about it in the catalog and the articles, but the painting we're talking about right now is right behind you on the wall.
Students that were here and people that were not students, I got a lot of good comments from them. So.
Did you feel like the reactions were different? Is this your first show that you've been in since it was removed from that?
It's hard to tell. The situation at Gainesville was strange because we had that snowstorm, so the opening got postponed.
Right.
For like 2 weeks actually. I can't remember how long. It's been a year. So it was almost like a closing reception, more than an opening reception. But because of the snow, and I was stuck here for a week. I couldn't go to work. So I don't think a lot of people got to really see the painting when it was there.
Southern Heritage. So they somehow saw it or knew about it and then wrote on their blog that it was despicable and said that they would, ask people not to donate to Gainesville State anymore if they were going to show this kind of despicable work. So it was very intense, and apparently
They put the president's email address, I think, on the blog. I don't think.
president of the college, they posted her email address, and then she caved, I guess.
And I have nothing against her. She's the only president I've taught at a lot of different places, and one night I was teaching, before this whole thing happened, I was teaching my appreciation class, and one night she just came in, introduced herself to me, to the students. I've never in any institution of higher education known of a president of a university to do that, and I thought I was very impressed with that.
And also, they interviewed you at the university.
Yeah, we had a panel. Oh yeah,
the video's online if you want to see.
One of the students that is in the department of journalism, I think, did a great interview. I thought it was great. She asked a lot of questions. The painting is in the background, which is kind of strange, but and then people are saying, "Wow, we didn't realize it was so big."
And then it was in the Chronicle for Higher Education.
Oh, it was in a lot of places.
It became a First Amendment issue.
Not exactly how I wanted to, I've been doing this for 27 years. It never crossed my mind that it was going to get so much attention because it's just expressing my opinion,
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's funny that it got so much.
But her reasoning, I think, is significant. Her reasoning was that this was an image of the South that people are trying to live down. I think she said to you, there was a quote in one of the articles where she said something about, it's what gives a bad impression beyond the South, a lynching. And so her idea was, we're trying to live this down, so why do you throw it back up again? Whereas the Southern Heritage Group's objection was that, it desecrated the flag.
It actually,
very different.
I think it brought so much negative attention to the college, which is not what I wanted. I work there, I love teaching there, but so I think in that sense it might have backfired for her because it just brought all this attention. I've heard comments of students saying, we didn't know this is the kind of school we go to. I'm thinking about transferring somewhere else, but I don't know if that really happened. And it was a great thing for other faculty because I think it brought the faculty together. And a lot of them used it. It was a great teachable moment. They used it for their art appreciation classes. I was too close to it and I couldn't use it in my classrooms because I painted it. And again, I wouldn't get the honest reactions from the students. So I really did not get to use it in my classes, but I think everybody else that was teaching art appreciation used it as a way of talking about artistic freedom, freedom of expression, censorship, and all of that. So I think it was good, not only for the art department, for in journalism and English departments, so they seemed to. And it made me feel really good. The faculty was really very supportive. Before I felt like I'm just an adjunct, but when this happened, I got so much support from the faculty at Gainesville State College. It made me feel like I was part of the department. There were a lot more positive out of this whole thing than negatives, even though there were some really intense negative parts on the internet especially, but there were a lot of positives that came out of it. So.
Yours and Ted's work are the only bodies of work that could be construed as political. Ted went about it in a really subtle way. The night of the event, he came dressed in a jumpsuit with a lunchbox.
I wish I could.
With a lunchbox and then a chain around his leg, which he chained himself to the table. And it was, I think, without being verbal about it, it was a subtle reference to the controversies about funding the scholarship from the lottery, because the demographic of those who buy the lottery tickets is overwhelmingly low income. And so without, making it verbal or literary, it kind of, for people with the eyes to see, they saw it, and others, not. So it was interesting. The subtle approach and then the direct approach, which you thought was subtle. The woman in the top of the painting is something no one ever talks about. And she's totally ambiguous. You don't know if she's from the past or the present. And she inhabits the space differently than the other characters, so you could almost say it's about her. I could see that in the reproductions, and I honestly didn't even see the painting before I wrote the essay. But when I came and saw that you had added, I saw the expression on her face, and I had to think, all this mania swirling around the painting was actually seizing on something peripheral to the whole thing.
It's interesting because that painting is not finished, even though.
Heard that before.
Well, sometimes I do that kind of thing, like it looks finished and I submitted it and I had it in the show, but she's grieving the death of her partner, which is me, So I found this beautiful poem of a woman that is grieving the death of a husband that is supposed to be written on that image somewhere. There's also an Afro-Cuban song from Puerto Rico that talks about how even though the blacks became free, or they were emancipated or free, they were really not free. Nothing changed. They still had to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and work, and they were in theory free, but nothing changed. So I also want to put that in there, but this whole thing exploded.
Hopefully you'll get a chance.
I'm still debating.